Welcome, everybody. This last session encompasses 2 decades. It was quite challenging to decide what to put in a short time because so much has happened in the 90s and then in 2000 towards the end, because we wanted to do this event also within the centenary year of Chiara. So we wanted to finish it by December. So it's really like putting everything together. But I think it will also be one of the most beautiful sessions because we come very close to Chiara's visit in India, the last moment. So I think while some of us may have heard something, I think it's a chance to really relive a lot of moments together with Chiara in these 2 decades. So what do we have in store for you today? And that Brian will just run us through.
Yes, Tony. So we have 5 moments in this session, no? As you were saying, 90s, and then we also spill over to the 2000, first decade of 2000. So the first point, first session, first part of this session would be inundation. That's where discovering how the charism penetrates and transforms society. So this is the first. Then we're going to see Pentecost, meeting with Pope John Paul II, along with all the ecclesial movement in the church. This happened in Rome. Then we have Chiara in India in 2001 and 2003. Then we have Saint John Paul II, a beautiful video, how much love he has, perhaps, for the movement and everyone. Then we have the last part, the 14th of March 2008, that is the passing away of Chiara to the heavenly Mariapolis.
Okay, so just to give you a glimpse of what the 90s mainly was about, we take you through a short clip.
After several attempts to promote a stable peace, the world is witnessing a fresh outbreak of war in various parts of the globe: the Gulf, the Middle East, the Ivory Coast, Angola, Congo. International terrorism has been creating hatred in an extraordinary way. September 11, 2001 is its most bloody symbol. Conflicts have risen in Afghanistan and in Iraq. In contrast, there is a rebirth of solidarity on world scale and a growing desire for peace. There is talk of interdependence. Many pacifist movements develop. All forms of assistance respond to national disasters. Volunteer activities increase. In the year 2000, the Catholic Church celebrated the Great Jubilee of the Second Millennium, highlighted by the Pope's historic encounter with 2 million young people.
So this is our last walk through history, which takes us this time through 2 decades. 1991 was the final year of the Cold War after the fall of the Soviet Union. This left the US unchallenged as the world's dominant superpower. From that moment on, America took a leading role in military involvement in the Middle East, which led immediately to the Gulf War. India abandoned its policies of socialism and autarky in July 91 and begins an extensive economic reform. This increased GDP, but also increased economic inequality over the next 2 decades. Rajiv Gandhi is assassinated by a suicide bomber sympathetic to Sri Lanka's Tamil Tigers, and in 1992, the Babri Mosque in Ayodhya is demolished, triggering widespread Hindu-Muslim violence. Chiara visits Brazil in 91. While at the Mariapolis Ginetta, São Paulo, she launched the project for an economy of communion in response to the wide gap between rich and poor. This idea gives rise to many EOC businesses all over the world. In 92, Chiara visits Africa for the inauguration of Mariapolis Piero in Nairobi. She launches the School for Enculturation. In 1994, Chiara was named one of the honorary presidents of the World Conference on Religion and Peace. In the church, we see the publication of two important encyclical letters in 1991, as well as the World Youth Day taking place in Częstochowa, Poland. 1995, the European Union is increased by 15 members, and in 1997, the European Economic Community starts with the Treaty of Amsterdam. 1996, the Taliban take power in Afghanistan, and 1997, Hong Kong returns to Chinese rule. Chiara receives the award, the Author of the Year award in Italy in 1995. With a group of politicians in Naples, she gives life to the Movement for Unity in Politics in 1996. In Paris, she is conferred the UNESCO Prize for Education for Peace. She was conferred an honorary doctorate in social sciences from the University of Lublin, Poland, for the innovative impact made by the spirituality of unity. This was followed by 15 other honorary doctorates in the coming years. In 1997, Chiara travels to Asia. In Bangkok, Thailand, she met the Supreme Patriarch of Thai Buddhism, who encouraged dialogue and collaboration between Buddhists and the Focolare movement. Later on in the year, she speaks on the unity of people at the United Nations in New York and addresses to 3,000 African American Muslims during a gathering at the Malcolm X Mosque in Harlem, New York. Pope John Paul II visits the US in 1995. Two further encyclical letters are published, as well as the pastoral letter to women. In 1997, Mother Teresa of Calcutta dies after 50 years of work in India. In February 1999, Mr. Vajpayee takes a historic bus trip to Pakistan to meet Premier Sharif and signs bilateral Lahore Peace Declaration. However, a few months later, in May, tension in Kashmir leads to a brief war with Pakistan-backed forces in Kashmir. In Europe, we see the introduction of the euro currency at the international market. The Church lives a historic moment at the Vigil of Pentecost when Pope John Paul II meets with ecclesial movements and new communities at St. Peter's Square in Rome in 1998. Chiara is one of the four founders who participates in this meeting, assuming the commitment before the Pope to start a path of communion among the movements, which leads to the meeting in Speyer in 1999. Chiara visits the South American continent in 1998. In Buenos Aires, Argentina, she meets members of the Jewish community with whom she sealed a pact of fraternity. Back in Europe, in Strasbourg, France, she receives with others the Human Rights Prize 98 from the Council of Europe. And 1 year later, she presents to the same council the experience of the economy of communion with proposals for a new economic framework. In Augsburg, Germany, she participates in 1999 in the ceremony of the historic signing of the Joint Declaration on Justice, Justification, and meets with the top leaders of the Lutheran Federation worldwide. In 2001, India launched a high-powered rocket, propelling itself into the club of countries able to fire big satellites deep into space. On the 11th of September, terrorists attacked the World Trade Center in New York. With this shocking event, the US embarked on the global war on terrorism, starting with the 2001 war in Afghanistan. In February 2002, we witnessed in India the outbreak of interreligious bloodshed in Godhra, Gujarat. The year 2000 began for Chiara with an honorary citizenship from Rome, followed by many other cities in Italy, as well as the conferral of the Great Cross of Merit from the Federal Republic of Germany. Chiara is invited to the US to speak to a convention with over 5,000 African American Christians and Muslims from the American Society of Muslims in Washington, D.C. A fraternal dialogue is developed that continues in several cities in the US. This became particularly significant after the attacks on September 11th. In Africa, Chiara meets with the Bangwa tribe for the third time, and she is crowned Mafwa Ndem, God's Queen. 2001 starts with Chiara's first trip to India. In Coimbatore, she received the Defender of Peace Award. In Innsbruck, Austria, later on, Chiara participates in the conference 1,000 Cities for Europe, attended by politicians, mayors, and municipal administrators from West and Eastern Europe. She proposes fraternity as a political category. 2002, Chiara promotes the first symposium for interreligious dialogue among members of the upper school and qualified scholars and professors from the Hindu faith. Other symposiums follow with representatives of Buddhism in 2004, Judaism and Islam in 2005. The Church celebrates the Great Jubilee year in 2000. In 2002, the Day of Prayer for Peace in the World at Assisi, promoted by Pope John Paul II, is held with religious leaders from 12 major world religions. Chiara and Andrea Riccardi speak as representatives of the Catholic Church. In 2003, the US invaded Iraq, deposing the controversial regime of Saddam Hussein. This resulted in a prolonged conflict that would continue over the course of the decade. 2003, Chiara's second visit to India. In the same year, Chiara promotes an International Marian Congress in Rome, which will be followed by 157 congresses on the 5 continents in response to Pope John Paul II's invitation for the year dedicated to the Rosary. 2004, in Stuttgart, Germany, the day event Together for Europe was held, fruit of the journey of communion among more than 150 movements and new communities from different churches. On the 2nd of April 2005, Pope John Paul II dies. The pontificate of Pope Benedict XVI begins. 2008 starts with a financial crisis caused by a crash of the stock market in the US, leading to a deep recession around the world. It was the largest and most severe financial event since the Great Depression of 1929. 2006, Chiara is invited by the Pontifical Council for the Laity to say a few words on behalf of all the ecclesial movements and new communities during the Pentecost Vigil with Pope Benedict XVI in St. Peter's Square. In October 2006, the industrial park Polo Lionello is inaugurated. Being located in the vicinity to Loppiano, it is a point of convergence for Italian companies that adhere to the project of the Economy of Communion. On the 7th of December 2007, the Sophia University Institute at Loppiano was established by pontifical decree, a further development of the Abba School. After having been hospitalized twice in Rome, Chiara is finally allowed to be transferred to her home in Rocca di Papa on March the 13th, 2008. On the next day, she reached her heavenly abode. With this, we have come to the end of our historical walk through time.
Thank you, Jutta, for taking us through these 2 decades. I think, as everyone can see, the 90s and the first decade of the 2000 of the 21st century have really been. There's been a lot of conflict around the world, but despite that, the movement has grown. So, right through the 90s, the design of God continued to unfold, going beyond boundaries and overflowing like a flooding stream, penetrating new fields of politics, economy, sociology, the arts, health, law, ecology, etc. It was a result of dialogue between the wisdom which the charism of unity had to offer to the various fields of human knowledge and endeavor. Chiara designated all the activities that developed through this dialogue as inundations. Chiara designated all these activities as inundations. Basically, it was a term borrowed from St. John Chrysostom, who's a doctor of the church, who compared the effects of the Holy Spirit on society to springs of water that inundate everything. But these springs of water are really torrents of living water. These inundations involve all people. So at this point, really, it went beyond the dialogue that we were having with the Christians or with people of other faiths, because it included even those without a religious reference or even those who did not believe in God, who were motivated by the universal values like fraternity, pluralism, trust, human dignity, and communion. There are many inundations in the movement today that find ways to incarnate the charism of unity in a particular field. We may be more familiar with the teachers who are in the field of education, or the doctors in the field of medicine, or the sport for peace. So which includes again sports, or for that matter, communication. So this is what is, I think, pretty active in India. So in this entire thing, while we will not speak of everything, we will just try to focus on two of them. One is on the field of economy. So it all started in 91 when Chiara visited Brazil. You may recall Yuta mentioned that, which led to the birth of the economy of communion. We will now see a short clip where a Focolare, Luigino Bruni, who's really been the spearhead of this economy of communion, is an economist by profession and currently a professor of economics at University LUMSA in Rome and University Institute at Sofia University. And he will share something about the economy of communion.
1991, in Brazil. Chiara was again struck by the contrasts in that society and promoted a daring idea in the economic field which has proven to be a new model. It brings together businessmen and the poor in social and economic spheres. The economy of communion was born, the seed of a new reality in the economic movement.
From the very beginning, Chiara invited the young people, the Gen, to study the economy of communion. They responded with enthusiasm, with courage. And in 1992, the first theses on the economy of communion were already written. Theses that studied not so much the businesses, but the foundations, because the Gen sensed that this was a new vision of economy, a new model. Today, 103 theses have been defended throughout the world and published on internet as well. But the young people played another important role, that is, to break ground in the academic world, thanks to the relationships between the Gen and their professors. The first scholars to become convinced of the economy of communion were the professors of these young people. They sensed that behind that proposal there was a new economic theory.
Today, the economy of communion is known outside the Focolare movement and is receiving growing attention in the academic world.
And what can you tell us about the entrepreneurs without whom the economy of communion would not exist?
Chiara, fin dall'inizio, ha guardato con un particolare amore gli imprenditori.
From the beginning, Chiara looked with special love at the entrepreneurs because she saw them as the people who would use the talents they received. At the same time, she saw them as people who could place themselves on the level of equals, of equal rights, of cooperation with everyone, with the workers and also with the poor. In fact, the entrepreneurs are not rich people who give their excess to the poor. Rather, in this project, entrepreneurs are the first poor people because they give everything. They also risk the business itself. At the same time, though, when the economy is lived in this way, it becomes kingdom of heaven. So they attract providence, which is the most beautiful note of all the work of Mary, and also of the economy of communion.
Infine, i poli produttivi sono forse l'aspetto più visibile, più osservabile.
Finally, the industrial parks. The industrial parks are perhaps the most visible part of the economy of communion. The first industrial park was the Spartaco Industrial Park in Brazil, then in Argentina, and many projects are underway. In 2001, in Italy, work began on the Lionello Industrial Park at Loppiano, a very important step.
Now, this interview of Luigino Bruni was done in 2003, so that's 17 years ago. But since then, also, there has been a lot of progress in this field of the economy of communion. Just last month, in November, in answer to a call from Pope Francis to young economists, entrepreneurs, and change makers to give a soul to the global economy, an event entitled The Economy of Francesco was held. Now, Pope Francis, what he was trying to do is, through this economy of Francesco, really um, try to bring alive the economy of Saint Francis of Assisi, where, as we all know, Saint Francis of Assisi worked extensively with the poor. So one of the main organizers collaborating with the Vatican on this big event involving thousands of young people across the world was the Economy of Communion. One of the participants in this preparation as well as the event that took place is Anna Maria. Anna Maria is here with us, and we will just probably ask her a few questions and get her impressions. But for those of you who do not know her, she's been a Jain ever since she was very young. She's an architect by profession and currently designs curriculum for children. And she has been involved with this Economy of Francesco, which was supposed to be initially held in the month of March, but it got postponed because of the pandemic. And finally, they had an online event in November. So, Anna Maria, are you here with us?
Hi, Ted. Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, a very warm welcome. I think it's the first time you've
Yes.
been part of this program, right?
Yes, true. It's lovely to be here and see so many of you.
Yeah, so we have mainly people from Bombay and Goa, and then of course Nepal and Hyderabad also with us. Okay, now just a few things. Anna Maria, can you tell us something about this Economy of Francesco?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, it all started with this call by the Pope, right? And the Economy of Francesco is a process. It was not just the event. And it started off with the Pope inviting youngsters from all over the world, entrepreneurs, change makers, researchers, to actually imagine and think of a new economic system. And not just imagine, he wanted us to roll up our sleeves, to actually work, to envision, to put projects into practice, to dialogue even with experts from across the world, and take action along with all of these people. So the event that you spoke about was the beginning of this, a 3-day process through which there were more than 2,000 participants from all over the world, which had even begun earlier, and we've been working together for 6 months. So again, it's a process and a journey which we've started on. And it's been great traveling with all of these international participants and co-journeyers for the last 6 months.
Okay, and what do you see as the link between the Economy of Communion and the Economy of Francesco? How communion contributes to the Economy of Francesco?
That's an awesome question, right? And like you said, we saw Luigino Bruni speak just a moment back. And Luigino Bruni and the Economy of Communion is like the scientific expert behind the Economy of Francesco, with all of these years of experience and the video that we just saw explaining the businesses and the theories. They are a big contributor to the different structures itself that was used for the Economy of Francesco, and a lot of proof points to allow and give a foundation to the Economy of Francesco. Also, the Economy of Communion, the networks itself from across the world acted as hubs for youth to come together, as points of connections for different experts to come together, and people who are already working with the Economy of Communion.
Okay, so they're both very closely linked, is what I see. Now, I understand that you took part in this Economy of Francesco event as a change maker. What has been this journey for you?
Yeah, so from writing the statement of purpose and explaining to the Economy of Francesco how and why I was a change maker, to being in this team along with 11 other Indians was something really amazing. But the journey just started there. And through these months, we've been able to actually do both. One is to meet up in our local context with other Youth for United World, also from Mumbai and Bangalore, to discuss how these theories were relevant in our context. But we also met with all the global participants online in different thematic villages to look at what the economy was globally, what different theories were there. And we had a lot of experts coming in from different fields who had a different economic thought and approach. And we had these opportunities to talk to them, to dialogue, and also to build on projects. So those were some of the things. For me, example, I was in the village that said work and care, where we were looking at how can we had Jennifer Nadelsky, And we were looking at how we can balance these two elements, starting from our lives, but also at a wider scale, and exploring universal basic salary. So as a change maker, I was able to be part of both the global impact as well as the local impact, and go back to my own project that I'm working on with renewed understanding, with a lot more dialogue and insight into how we could make this economy work. And it all comes back to Francis of Assisi, the Pope's call right now, and the economy of communion that we've been practicing over all these years.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
Wow. Thanks, Anna. Now, Chiara saw the very big role that the inundations play in the goal of unity. In fact, there's a very interesting reference. It is about Saint Francis of Assisi, who, seeing that some of his friars wanted to study at Paris, where even almost 1,000 years ago, Paris was really the hub of study and culture. He feared that they may get attached to their books rather than their choice of God. And so he used the expression, Paris, Paris, you destroy Assisi. Referring to this expression, Chiara spoke of 3 stages in the history of the movement. There were the first years, of course, that we've been through, where the spirituality was born and it was lived and everything was so rooted in the gospel. Chiara called this phase Assisi because that was a phase when the choice of God was made by her and her first companions. Then came the next phase, where the movement grew and the members of the movement felt very urged to draw from their life and from the spirituality a doctrine that lay beneath it. Hence the need to study the spirituality. Chiara called this phase Paris. But unlike St. Francis, who feared that Paris would destroy Assisi, Chiara said, we are not afraid of Paris. Paris will help Assisi. And then she added, one day Hollywood will be added to Assisi and Paris. So, what is Hollywood? It is, as Chiara referred to, the third phase of the movement. Hollywood symbolizes the reaching out to the masses. It is connected with the manifestation of the charism of the spirituality to many people. And this includes the inundations, the dialogue with the world of culture. So Assisi and Paris, without Hollywood, would miss the goal of making the inspiration of unity reach to the ends of the earth. But Hollywood, of course, is not just a phase of the movement. Net one of the inundations in communication, TV and movies, is also made up of persons who are in the world of Hollywood, the Hollywood that we know. We will now see a short interview with Mary Cass from the United States, who followed the developments in Hollywood. From initial meetings held in the elegant homes of Beverly Hills or of Malibu, the numbers grew, and soon this group started meeting at the Directors Guild of America building. Let's hear from her the hopes that there are from Hollywood.
There's great hope. Since 1997, we have had increasing contact with the world of Hollywood. The topics of our meetings are always timely, and the participants are well-known directors, screenwriters, and producers. They are Christians and Jews, and they all want to make films with positive values. Some people from Net1 went to Hollywood to offer their ideal experience. They spoke at the famous Directors Guild of America to about 100 experts, including professors and students of the various filmmaking schools. Their talks had a big impact. In fact, a famous director commented, "At times we feel like small Davids in front of Goliath in this world of the film industry. But you have given us new hope, the courage to continue to go against the current." Also, during their visit, they announced the birth of Focus Productions, an association that began in Rome with some people of Net1. The first project is called Golden Rule, a series of documentaries. The people of Hollywood were very enthusiastic about the project because it promotes unity and communication on all levels, interreligious communication in particular.
In this group of Hollywood, one of the most active persons is Ron Austin, who is a screenwriter and a producer. Tell us something about him.
He was fascinated by the words of Chiara when she came to the United States in 1997. She said, God, beauty, must become fashionable again, and he can come back into homes and to all environments through television, cinema, magazines, and so forth. 6 months ago, Ron started a revolutionary experience for Hollywood. He set up a production company whose working method is the art of loving. And for the first time on a Hollywood set, what was most important was that each one lived for the other in an atmosphere of mutual love and not the usual structure with the directors and producers ruling.
Durante la produzione di 3 fiction,
during the production of 3 films, this experience involved about 40 people, directors, actors, producers, and so forth. In fact, a well-known producer who offered to help with a project said, I understood that what counts here is unity among us. I apologize because I didn't love you. And this is something that never happens in Hollywood.
Thank you, Mary.
So, well, moving on from Hollywood, some of you must have heard, and if you're following the updates that arrive, that there's a film about Chiara and the beginnings of the Focolare movement that's in the works. And it will be aired on Rai Uno, which is the first channel of Italy's national state broadcaster. The theme being, can the power of a girl's dream and her faith change the world? This keynote has been addressed by the director, Giacomo Campiotti, and he bases this film on this little line. He narrates a story of Chiara Lubick in the early times, the young teacher from Trent, who in her very early 20s lived through the hardships and anguish that the war brought. And this biographical TV movie is the first to be made on Chiara Lubick. It will focus on the early years between 1943 and 1950, and we've walked through those years some months ago. It is a co-production by Rai Fiction and Casanova Multimedia. Cristiana Capotondi, is an established Italian actress, and she will play Chiara in the movie. So something to look forward to even on that front. Now, moving on. In the movement, these ways of reaching out to promote and encourage unity among all people are referred to as dialogues. I'm sure most of you know that there are 5 dialogues that we are engaged in as a movement, 5 fruitful dialogues developed over the years. We know of the dialogue among Christians of different churches. That is the second dialogue. Then, with the faithful of other religions, is the third dialogue. With persons of no religious affiliation is the fourth dialogue. And with people of goodwill in our present-day society, including the cultural dimension, which leads to collaboration for common values such as freedom, social justice, and international harmony, we have the Inundations, the fifth dialogue. So what is the first dialogue? That's what we're going to look at as we go on. This is the dialogue within the Catholic Church among individuals, groups, movements, and associations. It began in a very major way with the unforgettable and very inspiring meeting at Pentecost in 1998. I was there, one among 200,000 people of over 50 ecclesial communities and movements gathered from all around the world to celebrate and to share their life and experiences based on faith. Our Pope at that time, now St. John Paul II, speaking to us said, "Certainly, Your own charism leads you to direct your life towards a special intimacy with the Holy Spirit. You have helped many people to rediscover the presence and power of the Holy Spirit in their lives, in the life of the church, and in the life of the world. A rediscovery which has led many of them back to a faith in Christ, filled with joy and enthusiasm and a great love of the church and a generous dedication to her mission. In this special year, therefore, I join you in prayer of praise and thanksgiving for these precious fruits which God has wished to bring to maturity in your communities and through them in the church. Now, what followed this meeting was a renewed way of working together among movements, even here in India. And I remember a big meeting at St. Andrew's Auditorium in Mumbai in 1999, and in many other cities also. And all this was primarily through Chiara's promise to the Holy Father that the Focolare movement will play a leading role in getting movements together in this collaborative way, a way that continues even to this day. So let's watch a small clip from that momentous meeting.
Sappiamo che la Chiesa desidera, e anche lei.
We know that the Church, and you too, desire full communion, unity among the movements. And this has already begun. We want to assure you, Your Holiness, that because our specific charism is unity, we will make every effort to fully achieve it.
Pienamente.
It's the beginning of unity among the movements. One of the first to participate in this is Andrea Riccardi, founder of the community of Saint Egidio.
It's really a friendship in the Lord between two persons who belong to two different generations. The Focolare movement represented this great witness of love, genuinely rooted in the Church, but also creative in the Holy Spirit. This relationship with Chiara has become the relationship of all the community of Saint Egidio with the Focolare movement. Wherever I go, I meet Focolarini and Focolarine, and they come up to greet me. I speak, and at this point we know one another. This is something that was born, I believe, from the great openness of Chiara and the great spiritual maturity of hers, as a gift, in my opinion, of this season. I sometimes feel like saying, "Too late have I known you," as St. Augustine says, but it's never too late. Because for us, it was a time of development. Then there is the friendship, which is the great support that we all need. In other words, the reality of the communion of the Church. I believe that there is a maturation of times, and we must all wait for this and be open to this. This is why I said, beginning with my personal relationship with Chiara, this friendship has become a friendship of many.
Thank you, Nisha, for the presentation and the previous one as well. At this point of time, we can take a short music break. This time we've chosen for you another wonderful song from our Gen, our youth from the United States. This was during the Gen Fest 1995, and the song speaks about "We Can Be One."
At the heart of our country, there is a dream of freedom. But in our cities, we encounter poverty, violence, loneliness. Yet the dream God put in our hearts could not die. A powerful wind of unity is blowing across our land, and we have discovered true freedom.
In the land of opportunities, that you're standing tall, education and a job, I just had it all. But the freedom that I wanted, the American dream, it didn't fill my aspirations, yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I hear you, sister, check it out, check it out.
Tell me the story.
This is what it's all about. Where I live, I'm surrounded by materialism finds
people living a lie. I say what?
Going hungry.
Say what?
Going wrong.
People what?
Getting greedy.
No one's getting along.
I remember one day I was sitting in school, sitting in class, still trying to be cool. We divided into groups with no doubt in our minds. The only place to be was with your own kind. crossing the race line and facing them all. That's when I realized, that's when I knew, if they persecuted Jesus, they'll persecute me too. Now I go against the current, I go against the grain. I found it in my heart to let true freedom reign.
Hold on to the light. There's no time to lose. Keep the candles burning through the night. We will sing songs of freedom. We'll be lifting up our eyes as we reach beyond our borders and defenses. We will dance all together when the rainbows in the sky rain down their colors on the nations of the world. We will sing songs of freedom. Songs of freedom. We walking through the night as our joyful voices echo through the valleys. Through the valleys. We will dance all together when the walls come falling down. Yes, one day we can be one. 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 Joyful voices. We can be one.